Dear Lord, thank you for this day that we've been blessed to receive. We thank you for the technology and the opportunities that we have in our current lives to be able to continue to come together and study and learn a message that you have had your people develop over years to help us fully understand to a greater degree who you are, what you stand for, what your beliefs are, that we may grow in the character and likeness of God, that as we are studying now, we may understand equality comprehensively for the betterment of every living being, that we may make the changes in ourselves necessary to assist society, to be participants in the kingdom of heaven, and to help to produce and promote a healthy world. We ask that you'll please guide us and direct us as we review information that was being given to us that is beneficial for us. Though many years back, it is still guiding and directing us as a Midnight Cry message. We pray for our people who are unwell all over the world, within this movement and without, who are struggling with various forms of sicknesses and illnesses. And we ask that you will please help us to develop empathy and understanding and clarity of thought in dealing with and tackling the issues that are separating our societies, that we may understand comprehensively how to address these issues. We thank you for hearing and answering our prayers. In Jesus' name, amen. So to start with, within Australia, our ministry here has been doing revision of Elder Tessa's Friday night Vespers, and we've been doing this revision during our Wednesday night prayer meetings. And today's study, we're focusing on a couple of points that Elder Tess brought out in one of her Vespers studies, which focuses on a couple of different points, 2016 being one of them, and the election process, which seems like a lifetime ago now, so many years, and it wasn't really that long ago. But I know how quickly we forget the information. So I hope that some of the things we look at, we may have seen before, but we will review again. And with the idea of coming away with a clearer understanding of our position today, where we stand, why we've made the decisions that we have. So from the beginning of the Midnight Cry message, there was lots of really important information that came out. One of the important pieces of information that came out was two streams of information. What the two streams of information did was allow us to see and understand what stream we were drinking from. And if we were to, as we always do within the United States, we take it back to their two main powers within the political system, which is the Democratic and Republican parties. And we understood that there was two streams of information through the Midnight Cry message, and those two streams determine where you will place yourself ideologically within the political spectrum in the United States. These aren't the only two parties, but they're the two main parties, Republicanism and the Democrats. So at the beginning of the Midnight Cry message, we were given the tools to understand that we needed to make a shift from where we were within Adventism and within the movement, we were seated on the right-hand side. Our ideology, our political beliefs are swerved towards republicanism, quite a long way over. Two streams of information through the Midnight Cry message helped us to understand, along with lots of other points that were brought out, that we needed to make a shift over to the left side, the democratic side. Then as we progressed through time, up until I think it was about 2022, Elder Tess started presenting the Vespers programs here in Australia, which were uploaded onto YouTube. And what the Vespers program does is, after we've made the change from republicanism to a democratic way of thinking, it helps us to see that that isn't the only change that needs to take place. What also needs to take place is understanding that within this democratic ideology, there are also two streams of information, and one is correct, one is incorrect, and that we need to be able to decipher and understand which side or which stream of information is telling us the truth and giving us the good information. Because if you're in the wrong side, you are in the same state as being on the totally wrong side of republicanism. So those Vespers programs are really important to help us to understand the left wing, understand the flaws, the challenges, and the problems in certain areas and in their thinking, to make sure that this movement has the thinking and understanding that God would have towards how we treat people, and the expectancies that we have upon people. So we know that 2018 is the Midnight Cry message. Behind me on the board up here, we've got the priests, Levites, and Nethinims. We know that the formalization takes place and is the Midnight Cry message. When we overlay the models of Boston, Concord, and Exeter, and the test which we received from the Millerite line, we understand that we have an increase of knowledge that comes prior to the formalization. And that increase in knowledge is in 2016. So when we go to 2016, there are two political opponents. We know it's an election year. And both of these opponents carry a prophetic significance. There's a choice that needs to be made between political parties. And that 2016 election is externally the increase of knowledge for the Midnight Cry. So the events were an external event that took place, which were an increase in knowledge of the understanding of the formalization, which was seen throughout all of these groups of people. So the priests, the Levites, the Nethinims, everybody in the world, wherever they were, through the benefit of the internet and social media and all those things, were exposed to the challenges and trials that took place in the 2016 election. So there was a particular point in 2016 that was a test for us. This point was significant for the entire world. These two political opponents squaring off against each other, vying for the presidency of the United States. So why are we, those of us who live outside of America, interested in the election process of something that happens inside of America? How is the process of an election of another country significant for those of us who live in countries like Australia, like New Zealand, like Fiji, like any of the other areas outside of America? So we know that our Bibles and the spirit of prophecy refers a lot to America. It seems to be front and center in many of those places. For us, here at the end of the world, we have seen a superpower, which is America, which arose like a lamb-like beast, according to the spirit of prophecy and the Bible, with great intentions, and whose might and whose power and economy and influence throughout the world shapes the direction of the world to a level and magnitude that has never been seen since creation. There have been lots of other powerful empires on the world. Daniel lists them all. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. But these were limited in effect as the size of the area that they contained or managed, and their influence that they had. Arguably, America has much more reach and power and possible influence over all of the other countries in the world. So to be able to watch the greatest superpower that this earth has seen fail to reach its potential and then come crashing down before our eyes as we are sitting here, and for one reason, because in every generation that this society has been in place, a vast majority of our society has chosen not to do the hard work of identifying and correcting our wrong behaviors, our wrong beliefs, and our wrong ideas that permeate our culture. So this culture is what we cling to and have fabricated and believe in and are unwilling to change at the detriment of people around us. So back to the 2016 election, there's two opponents there that we mentioned. And the first answer that might come to your mind is Trump versus Clinton. This is the November election of 2016. And as Elder Tess has taught before, this became, or was and is, a test for all of those who would enter the kingdom of heaven, to understand the difference here of, if we put it in a phrase that we use, is freedom versus equality, or freedom having rule over equality, or equality having rule over freedom, depending on which party you are aligned with. More importantly, as we continue our walk along a line towards the second advent, we are understanding and needing to understand how to sift the left. What are the circumstances and events that are taking place that are shaping the Democratic Party, and how is that impacting the rest of the world? So what's lesser known than the main election is the 3 months earlier, in July of 2016, there is a Democratic National Convention which takes place. And this convention is the ratifying or the confirmation of a party to put forward a person for president. So I'll share screen in just a moment, but we're looking at a Democrat Party and a Republican Party will both have their national convention. So you'll have a Democratic National Convention, and the Republicans will also have a Republican National Convention. And in this convention, they elect and select a person to run as their president, their potential president. In July of 2016, before Hillary Clinton could even tackle Trump, before the Democrats could even start to take on the Republicans, they needed to sort out a battle within their own ranks. And that battle was between Hillary Clinton and his name escapes me now, Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. It starts with B, and Biden would not exit my mind. So what I'm going to do, a screen with you. And we're just going to look at some very basic information or simplistic information on what is a national convention. Now, is everyone able to see what I've put up on the board, and is it clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Graeme. Thank you.
So we're just going to read through that. What is a national convention? National conventions are held every 4 years in the summer of the presidential election year. The party to which that current president belongs holds its convention in August. The other party or out party traditionally hosts its convention in July. So this information is simplistic and it can change, but what it's saying is every 4 years on an election year, both of these parties, Republicans and Democrats, hold a national convention. And in that national convention, which is held generally in July, if you're the party that has not got a president currently sitting, or in August, which can change when you have a sitting president. Democratic and Republican Party representatives, called national delegates, meet at the party's national convention to vote for the nominees for president and vice president. Each state has a number of delegates allocated to each party based on the population and the relative strength of each party in that state. The total number of delegates is different for each party, but each party's nominee must win a majority of the delegates in order to win. So, Democratic Party comes together. They have a couple of names on the paper of who they're going to vote for, and whoever wins the majority of votes is able to run for potential presidency within that party. The national conventions no longer choose the nominees in most cases. Presidential primaries and caucus or conventions determine which candidates have enough votes to be the nominees. Generally speaking, the conventions simply ratify those choices. So prior to this national convention taking place, which we're looking at July of 2016, the candidates have already been selected. And so what they were doing is just ratifying, just confirming what has taken place in the selection process, and then determining which person is going to go through. The 2016 Democratic National Convention was a presidential nominating convention held at Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, from July the 25th through to July 28th. The convention gathered delegates of the Democratic Party, the majority of them elected through a preceding series of primaries and caucuses, to nominate a candidate for president and vice president in the 2016 United States presidential election. Former US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was chosen as the party's nominee for president by a 54% majority of delegates present at the convention roll call, securing it over primary rival Senator Bernie Sanders, who received 46% of the votes and from delegates, and becoming the first female candidate to be formally nominated for president by a major political party in the United States. So there are more than more than just these two parties in the United States. There are lots of other little parties, but these are only ever going to be the two parties that get in. They have too much power at this present to be able to have an independent group come in and take over. So Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton are the two people who are battling it out in 2016 in the July period for the opportunity to run as president and to run against the Republicans. But this is a battle that Hillary Clinton has to overcome before she can take on Donald Trump as a Republican. The convention was not without controversy, as it was subject to various conflicts between supporters of the presidential campaign of Bernie Sanders and the Democratic Party. In the week prior to the convention, various emails from the Democratic National Committee, the governing body of the Democratic Party, were leaked and published, showing bias against the Sanders campaign on the part of the committee and its chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Some delegates in support of Sanders staged protests both outside and on the floor of the convention, opposing the nomination of Clinton and Kane. Kane was her vice president, as the party's nominees for president and vice president, respectively. So what generally happens during these Democratic national conventions is an opponent will realize, one of the two people, either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, will realize that they're not doing well, that the other person is going to be more successful for that party and help that party to get in to power and run for presidency. What they try and do is come as a whole party. And so if one of them is losing and does not look like they can win, they will concede the race. They will forfeit. They'll say, I'm going to back, let's say, Hillary Clinton. If Bernie Sanders was losing, he would say, no, that's enough. We don't want to cause any more division among our party. What we're going to do is endorse Hillary Clinton and throw our full support behind Hillary Clinton. But that didn't happen in 2016. And we'll read a couple more points. The 2016 Democratic National Committee email leak is a collection of Democratic National Committee, which is DNC, which is the acronym there, emails that was stolen by one or more hackers operating under the pseudonym of Guccifer 2.0, who were alleged to be Russian intelligence agency hackers, according to indictments carried out by Mueller's investigation. These emails were subsequently leaked by DC leaks in June and July of 2016, and by WikiLeaks on July 22nd, 2016, just before the Democratic National Convention. So in 2016, there was so many things happening. If you Google 2016 events surrounding the election and the process that took place, there's just a plethora of information. There's heaps of information there. And this particular point that we're focusing in on is the split in the Democratic Party and the difference that we're seeing there. When you have a Democratic National Party convention, where will you see that? So we saw the Democratic National Convention. The people who organize the Democratic National Convention are called the Democratic National Committee. Exactly the same acronym, which really doesn't help. So convention, and then committee. So this committee are the people who organize the convention. They have emails. There's about 9 or 10 of them on this committee, and they sent emails backwards and forwards to each other, and they preferred Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. I'll just stop sharing for just a moment while we discuss this. So up on the top of the board, you can't see because of the light. Very good. I've written the Democratic National Convention and Democratic National Committee. This committee preferred Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. And Russian hackers hacked this email chain, hacked a whole lot of emails, and then sent them off to people and leaked them at key points during the election process. So this took place in July. We saw the 25th to the 28th. And just before this convention took place, they leaked these emails showing the bias of the Democratic Committee towards or favoring Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. And what that did was to be able to create turmoil and separation within the Democratic Party, who are already known for not being as unified as Republicans. When you have Republicans come together, they have very wide and varying ideas and thoughts and beliefs, but they are they're very good at coming together for a cause, even if it is wrong cause altogether. They will still stand by each other a large majority of the time. I'll go back to sharing the screen, and we're just going to look at what the leaks of information did towards the campaign of Hillary Clinton and the result. So we understand, or we may be able to recall, that there was a special investigation that went on for over a year by Mueller. And one of the points that was looking into was the hacked information that they had gotten from the Democratic National Committee. On December 9, in 2016, the CIA told the US legislators that the US intelligence community concluded Russia conducted operations during the 2016 US election to prevent Hillary Clinton from winning the presidency. Multiple US intelligence agencies concluded people with direct ties to the Kremlin gave WikiLeaks hacked emails from the Democratic National Committee. What's also important to note here is that people took the Democratic National Committee, especially their chairman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, to court, and they tried to sue her for damages, but there was nothing illegal about what they had done. In their statements online, they do profess to try and be impartial, which they failed to do, but there was no law that was broken. And if you had a look at what the Republican Party does, it is no less what takes place. The Republican Party, especially if you've got Trump or people like-minded running for power, they are bullying, they are vile in the lengths that they go to secure people's votes to promote them to that position of power as presidency. Hillary Clinton didn't do any of these things. The people in the committee liked her better than Biden. She was a better fit for the president of the country and was better suited to run the Democratic Party for the United States to ensure its success and the USA's success throughout the world. So a court concluded that the DNC didn't break any laws. The committee didn't break any laws by being biased towards Hillary. So by this time, the damage is already done. Hillary has already lost. And this fracture that took place in the 2016 election between the two parties helped to, it wasn't the only reason, but helped to secure the win for Donald Trump, which set back the world to a point we can't recover from now. We are only going to continue to slide down. So we want to understand the difference between these two people that we're running here. We want to understand the differences that they have within the Democratic Party, to understand our two streams of information as we're continuing forward. So for a long time, from the beginning of the Midnight Cry message, from 2018 onwards, Elder Tess showed the flaws and problems within the Republican Party, showed the two streams of information, how we're to view two streams of information, how we're to be able to understand and know which is the correct stream and decipher. And then when we get over here, after we've made the transition from being Republican or right wing, we come over to the left wing and we realize we need to sift through and sort out and understand what's taking place in the Democratic Party as well, because not everything here is good and is just as bad as thoughts and ideas that are pervasive within the Republican Party or in a right-wing mindset. So I highly encourage everyone as much as possible to continue on with the Vespers study that Elder Tess has presented for from the beginning of 2022 right through July, August of 2022. They're very, very good. So if we think that November of 2016 is a testing point, which it is, November 2016 with the election of Donald Trump and the battle between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, then just as much a test is the July convention, July 25 through to 28 of 2016, 3 months prior, this battle has taken place within the Democratic Party. One of the points to understand is that Bernie Sanders is not a long-time Democrat. He probably still doesn't call himself a Democrat. He will swing from place to place. He has a specific agenda that he wants to push. It's socialism, and he'll phrase that in different ways, depending on the interview that he's in at the time and what he's saying. So what I'm going to do is just pick out a couple of very basic and simple ideas where Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders differ throughout this July process that took place, where they're interviewing him and they're asking him, what policies do you stand for? Why should we back you rather than the other person? And there's just a couple of points. There's lots out there, but there's 2 points that I want to bring out that should really resonate with us and help to clarify the difference, or a couple of differences, and why we choose one over the other. So I'm going to share screen again. So we're looking at the first one is foreign policy. These 2 quotes are from the same article, showing the difference between Hillary Clinton, or a couple of the differences between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Clinton is more of a hawk than Sanders and most other Democrats. On foreign policy issues involving the use of American force abroad, it's actually Clinton, not Sanders, who's most out of step with the Democratic Party. And since the president has broad authority to conduct foreign policy without congressional oversight, this matters quite a bit. It is very clear that President Clinton would bring a far more hawkish instincts to bear on global problems than the current president. So when this is written, the current president is Barack Obama. And we've got this article writing about the differences between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And they use the word hawkish. And hawkish is a term that they use to describe as willing to get in and get the job done using military force if necessary. You can find, if you Google that, you'll find a more holistic understanding of hawkish, but that's a breakdown in my words of what hawkish is. So Clinton is willing to go in to use the power of the United States to stop atrocities that are happening overseas, to fight for human rights in areas where they are clearly being violated. This is a good thing. We understand that the difference between republicanism and Democrats is this term of putting equality for people above the freedom of others if you are a Democrat, contrasted with the Republican Party, who is putting the freedom of individuals above the equality of people. So we see here that Bernie Sanders is putting the freedom of people in other countries above the equality of the people. And he is not willing to intervene in those things, or less likely to intervene. He is willing to let them commit the atrocities that they're committing, whereas Hillary Clinton is saying, no, you will not commit those atrocities against the people. We're going to intervene and prevent any further damage and harm and loss of life to these people. On the next point down, you'll see Clinton has more frequently pushed for gun control measures. One major issue on which Clinton has a more consistently liberal record than Sanders is gun control. Representing rural Vermont, Sanders has frequently voted against Democrats' efforts to restrict gun sales in Congress. For instance, in the early 1990s, he opposed many versions of the Brady Bill, which created background checks and waiting period for gun purchases, arguing that the gun control shouldn't be a federal concern. He also voted for a 2005 law that made it much harder to sue gun manufacturers. So again, we're seeing this contrast between this freedom and this equality, this freedom of individuals to own guns versus the equality of being put forward saying you cannot continue to commit harm. So we know that guns and freedom align with the ideology of the Republicans or right-wing conservative thinking. We understand that the restriction of the freedom to own guns and the restriction of other countries to do what they will with their own citizens is putting equality over the top of freedom. So these are two simple but hopefully clear areas where two people within this Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders, differ, and that split of information that comes within here. Bernie Sanders may agree with lots of different points as Hillary Clinton did, but there are very important other pieces of information that made him less suitable than Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was the only choice. And understanding those differences allows us to move forward in our understanding of future people coming and how they represent or what they're going to represent and how we decipher the information that is given to us. So these events took place in 2016, but we know that this is a continuing battle that takes place. This battle between cultural feminism and radical feminism. Hillary Clinton standing for and representing that radical feminism. Bernie Sanders standing for that, representing that cultural feminism. For us within the movement, we have our prophetic application of Antigonus that we were given back in 2018, which helped us to understand and comprehend our shift from Republican Party to Democratic Party. And as we progress through the Midnight Cry, we see that breaking down an understanding of left-wing Democratic Party and how we are to understand that information. When we got to 2019, we are reaffirming our position on Hillary Clinton, stating that it is correct that we have held these opinions, these beliefs as a movement and are moving forward with that. And then by the time we get to late 2019 and into 2020, that's where we see a fight within this movement, which can be described as a fight between radical feminism and cultural feminism. This right that I have the freedom to do this, or I have the freedom to dress like this, or think like this. And because I chose it, that makes it okay. And that's falling into the trap that we see within this state. This is the trap that we see Bernie Sanders is that representation of, that mindset. So we can't understand, or we couldn't understand back in 2016, 2018, the issues and the problems with the Democratic Party without first understanding the issues and problems of the Republican Party. So that's why that breakdown and process has taken place in the way that it has, why God has unfolded through Elder Tess, the studies that she has given us, the shift that we needed to make first over to the Democratic Party, and then to break down the problems within the Democratic Party. And we saw that Hillary Clinton had to first take down Bernie Sanders in July before she could even run for that opportunity to be president of the United States. We're going to look at a slightly different topic that has stemmed from the loss of Hillary Clinton and the backlash that takes place. We've had, prior to 2016, 8 years of President Obama running the USA, and that has been a very positive thing for the USA in general. He's been a great president. And the backlash that comes from the Republican Party, the countering of that 8 years where they have been suppressed, is that when Hillary Clinton didn't get in, is denied the access, then the Republican Party fights so much harder and change so many of the boundaries and lines that we're seeing change today in backlash. One of the things that we're seeing there is the attack on equality. Obviously, freedom being the motto for the Republican Party. So we saw from 2014 particularly strong advancement in the movement of the Me Too movement. And we're going to read an article and some of the points that are made. I'll share screen with you again. So the Me Too movement is hashtag Me Too. If you're unfamiliar with it, Google it and see how it originated. But we saw that there was a particular producer, a film producer in Hollywood, that was abusing female actors. And if that actor wanted to get a role in a particular movie, that person within the film industry, Harvey Weinstein, would take advantage of them, would do unspeakable stuff to those females in order to them to get a role. And what happened was a Me Too movement. And this was a platform where people came together and told their experiences of being abused. And it created gathered a lot of momentum over a period of time from 2016 forward. But what we see, unfortunately, because Hillary Clinton lost the election and we get Donald Trump in, that there is a counter-revolution to the events that have taken place, to the progress that has been made. So we'll start reading there. The backlash to the Me Too movement was always coming. We know this because a backlash has followed every single step forward that feminists have ever made. This backlash was always going to be big too. not only did the Me Too threaten a status quo that props up powerful men, it threatened these men personally, as it seemed, to some with reckless caprice. The word caprice there, it means a sudden and unaccountable change of mood or behavior. So it threatened these men personally, and some seem to think that it was with reckless caprice, so completely changing their mood and behavior. We know that that was always there. That mood and behavior was always there. It just needed the right circumstances to come forward. Female accusers are still routinely treated as if they are lying, both by the public and the courts, more so than other alleged victims of crime. It took the testimony of more than 100 women to bring down Harvey Weinstein. But as we know, Brett Kavanaugh was not brought down. Brett Kavanaugh is a Supreme Court judge who committed these same acts, who abused women, and is still Supreme Court judge, was never held accountable. So this particular article is looking at the Me Too movement, and it brings us forward to 2022, just last year, very close to this time. As a result of the counter-revolution against the progress that has been made for equality over freedom, we saw this trial come up in Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. This trial went to court in the UK, and the UK found that Johnny Depp did abuse his wife. He beat her. He's a wife beater, and he abused her in so many different ways. After he was convicted, he come back to the United States, and he decided he was going to use the public to be on his side, because he knew the culture of the United States would support him, and defame and demoralize it and cause a world of hurt for Amber Heard and all females and all subjects of equality that will follow as a result. The public reaction to the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial is what a Me Too backlash looks like. Every sexist trope ever used to humiliate and discredit female accusers has been deployed against her at a vast scale. Reenacting her testimony of rape and abuse has become a game on TikTok. She has been mocked by Saturday Night Live and by Chris Rock, who says, "Believe all women except Amber Heard," and NSYNC's Lance Bass. So the author of the article has said that throughout the ages, anything that has been used against other females who have come forward with accusations of abuse have been used against Amber Heard in this one trial that took place over a couple of months, to the point where social media sites like TikTok create a game. I want to say that it was TikTok necessarily, but there's a game on TikTok that you reenact the abuse that took place to her. And if you know what Saturday Night Live is, it's a program that's run in the US where comedians, supposedly comedians, get up and make jokes of current content in the news and events that are taking place around the world. And Saturday Night Live is generally thought to be a more liberal idea of thinking. But these comedians have it absolutely wrong. So this author is pointing out that these people who made light of this situation are people who are supposed to be left-leaning people. Herd's tormentors, many of them young women, do not see themselves as anti-feminists. They believe women, of course, just not this one. And this is where the danger comes in as we continue to read. It is not they who are damaging the Me Too movement. It is Herd, by virtue of being an imperfect victim. Culture of society only wants perfect victims if you are a female. If you're a male, you get all the chances in the world if you're an imperfect victim. You'll see it all the time. You go to any prison updates, news information, it'll be give him another chance. Look at Johnny Depp, give him another chance. But if you're a female, as we read up the top, as soon as you head into court, you are less likely to be believed just because you're a female and you're accusing somebody. Doesn't matter how much information and facts and testimony you have, you're instantly, in the minds of your jury, less believable. And this is what is destroying the possible growth and forward application of gender equality into the future. By making a person an imperfect victim, particularly females, making a female an imperfect victim and saying, we believe most of the females who bring false accusations, but not this imperfect one. And as soon as they make you an imperfect victim, and let's face it, every single one of us are imperfect. We have all been in bad situations and had to do the best that we had to do to survive. They perhaps forget that the project of Me Too, the whole point, was to help imperfect victims, those who were wearing the wrong thing. Now, when it says wearing the wrong thing, they weren't wearing the wrong thing. Society or culture says that they were wearing the wrong thing, that they got drunk, or they were promiscuous, or that they loved their perpetrator, or that they'd previously broken the law, or that they'd lied before, or that they had a bad character or seemed a bit nutty or a little bit slutty, as this writer writes. As David Brock once memorably described Anita Hill, who testified during Clarence Thomas's US Supreme Court confirmation hearings in 1991. In fact, perfect victims have never needed feminism, partly because they barely exist. There are no perfect victims. When it comes to this court case battle, they will dig into every possible avenue of making you look like an imperfect victim so that they can discredit you. Whether or not Heard's accusers fully realize it then, setting up bad victims or imperfect victims in opposition to genuine victims is a very effective method of unpicking the Me Too movement. It is only the rare misogynist who outrightly admits that they don't believe women. Their objection has always been just this a caution for little ears and little eyes. There is some language in this document, in this news article, that you may find offensive and is offensive, and you may not want your little children to look. Going back to that last section, their objection has always been to this one particular woman, and they call her a female dog who is lying. Hashtag Me Too. The clue is in the name. Attempted to combat this by linking experience of all those people, all those females who weren't believed. So with the case of Harvey Weinstein, there was multiple people come forward, but it wasn't until it hit 200 that they started to actually take notice. It went to exceeding levels before anyone took notice of the atrocities that were taking place there. So we could see the pattern. In fact, you could say the whole project of feminism is about taking bad things that happen to women, which they thought only happened to them or were their fault, and calling them by one name. Divide us back into unlinked individuals who might be lying, and the movement is lost. So the movement came together by bringing in imperfect victims. And that's where it had its strength, identifying, yes, we've got problems, but we are being abused. And now what the backlash against the Me Too movement or the counter-revolution is doing is singling out each of those people and making them not linked, separating them so that they are just an individual who is imperfect and flawed and therefore is not to be believed. It is still misogyny. It's just not openly misogynistic in the way that someone would say, we don't believe women or anything that they say. Me Too is often framed as having uncovered truths about the world. Its success was because women explained really clearly, see the quote there, what was going on. No, this is not what happened. People already knew what was going on. Me Too worked for the reason any feminist movement worked, and it was strength in numbers. It is political movement pushing against incredibly strong forces in the other direction. There's no there's no reason to think that this work cannot be rolled back or undone. So I'll stop sharing there. There are forces taking place where a Me Too movement is pushing back against the abuse that is taking place, but that counter-revolution pushes back even harder against this Me Too movement. Part of the backlash against this understanding of gender equality and equality over freedom. So we understand that this difference in beliefs and ideology comes down to culture. Culture is pervasive on both sides, incorrect or correct. And we're looking at culture wars that have taken place within a country. So when the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, had their emails hacked by the Russian IRA, they sent them out at direct times to impact the community within America, to create that division, that information warfare that we've seen that Russia is very good at, or has been very good at, who is slipping a little bit on the current stage. So that culture war can break democracy within the United States. And as we explained earlier at the start of the presentation, why that's important for us. Because if the biggest superpower here in our current existence can be taken down with this culture war, we know that every other country is impacted by its own standards of culture, and that own standards of culture are sexist. They are against most rights for equality. They will put the freedom of people over the equality of others. That the structure of society is patriarchal. and that we cannot have equality in our current system with patriarchy ruling over equality. So we're going to look at another little article that discusses how the culture war, it says, could break democracy. It has broken democracy. It has broken it and it can't be repaired. This person, I'll share the screen again. "30 years ago, sociologist James Davison Hunter popularized the concept of culture war. Today, he sees a culture war that has gotten worse, and that spells trouble for the future of the American experiment. I would put it this way. Culture, by its very nature, is hegemonic. It seeks to colonize. It seeks to envelop in its totality. The root word of culture is Latin, cultus. It's about what is sacred to us. And what is sacred to us tends to be universalizing. The very nature of the sacred is that it is special. It cannot be broached. Culture, in one respect, is about that which is pure compared to that which is polluted. It is about the boundaries that are often transgressed and what we do about that. And part of the culture war, one way to see the culture war, is that each has an idea of what is transgressive, what breaks those laws, of what is violating, what is a violation of the sacred, and the fears and the resentments that go along with that. Every culture has its view of sin. Sin is an old-fashioned word, but it refers to that which is ultimately profane or cannot be permitted, must not be allowed. So the author of this article is interviewing this person, and this person is talking about sin, and that is the best word that he can use to describe what is wrong with the actions of people in society and the ideas. And these acts must not be allowed within culture. And once society determines its cultural standings, it will determine what is allowed and what is not allowed. Understanding those things that underwrite politics helps us understand why this persists the way it does, why it inflames the passions that we see. And yet politics becomes a proxy for cultural positions that simply won't brook any kind of dissent or argument. So it's not willing to take on any dissent. It's not willing to look at any arguments. It is very much, it puts a wall up. This is our culture. You cannot touch our culture. Democracy, in my view, is an agreement that we will not kill each other over our differences, but instead we'll talk through those differences. And part of what's troubling is that I'm beginning to see signs of the justification for violence on both sides. If I could draw a parallel, it's not unlike a civil war. There was a culture war for 30 years prior to the Civil War. The Civil War was, without question, about slavery and the status of Black men and women. And yes, the good guys won the Civil War at the cost of 4 out of 10 Southern males dying and 1 out of 10 Northern males. We are in the midst of our civil war within. Let me stop sharing for a moment. Within the United States. And we are seeing a cultural war take place, this war between equality over freedom and freedom versus equality. And we know where it's going. We know that the Lord is coming back and that we are heading downhill rapidly. We've seen the unwinding of abortion rights within America. And this process has been coming for a long time. It is a backlash against equality. And as we understand the failings of the left, the failings within ourselves to understand equality, the failings within society, we look to change those things within ourselves through proper education and information, that we may be fit vessels to be around and influence whoever our sphere of influence is, our mums, our dads, our kids, our uncles, our aunties, whoever we come into contact with, that we may be that example. So we'll close in prayer, and then we'll open it up for any questions that anyone might have. If you'll bow your heads with me. Dear Lord in heaven, thank you for the prophetic studies that you have given us. Thank you for the understanding and the light that we have available to us through our fingertips, right at the internet, that we may socialize in a sense through Zoom and come together and to continue to discuss and encourage it, to correct, to discipline ourselves in the correct understanding of gender equality, the test for us here at the end of the world. And as society around us crumbles, as we fail to uphold equality, we ask that we will be beacons of light within our spheres of influence, correctly understanding and acting upon gender equality. May you receive the honor and glory as we serve. We ask for a special blessing upon all those who are sick and unwell. We ask for special blessings upon our leaders in each of the movements across the world. Bless us and guide us to make that hard change that is so difficult. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.